So we feel like we're in a pretty good spot. I mean, we go all the way back to before the draft, and we kind of set some goals in terms of what we wanted to do with our asset base and then also our talent base. And from our first pick in Mason up until now with the two trades and the two claims we made, we feel like we put ourselves in a good spot to start the season. The young guys have done a great job. Coaches talked about the development and kind of accounting for every minute of their day, and I think you see just the work they've put in across the board on both sides. And even today, Carson's making plays on the ball, Harold, just Dylan making throws. So just they will continue to grow and develop, but we feel really good about where they are and just excited to keep adding to the team and assessing where we are as a roster.
Can you give us any insight whatsoever into where things stand with the franchise?
I can't. I'll let Andrew address that. He'll update you when the time is right, Mary Kay, but there's no update.
And can I just maybe follow up on that? And I don't know if you can answer this or not either, but the fact that you went ahead and signed Rocket today, does that speak to whether or not Winshawn got
I think what it more speaks to is just, like in August, you may feel like you're deep at a certain spot, and you get to January, and there's a scarcity available. So I think looking at us taking a step back, assessing what's available at the marketplace, set the cut downs, to go get a player like this who, you look up in October, you might not have a chance to get. We're just excited to get the talent, give him to the coaching staff, and let them deploy him the best way they see fit.
Can you talk about the Kenny Pickett trade, how that kind of evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys know how we are just in terms of being active in that transaction when it comes to trades. And so there's just a lot of conversation. Andrew, will at some point loop us in and get our thoughts on it. And we just work as a group to collab on, hey, is this the best decision for us? What level of pick or asset do we want in return? And it's just something we work through, So at times it happens over 24 hours. Sometimes it takes a few weeks. It was one of those things where we worked through it and felt good about the group and felt good about the room and thought it was the best decision for the team. I think it was just like a fluid conversation across the board, and it's just obviously they had an injury, and it made sense for both sides to have some conversation and consummate a trade.
You may have 10 to 13 rookies on this roster by the time the Cincinnati game. How much of a priority was it to repopulate the team with young players that weren't able to for the last 3 years?
Yeah, I think it was more about, like Kevin talked a lot about, like the competitiveness, like raising a level of competitiveness. And if you're going to talk about being a team that competes, it's opening up the roster spots to whoever earns it. And I think that's more of a sign of those young guys coming in, no matter where they came from, how they were acquired, and sort of earning it every day. And so I think it just so happens that it's a lot of young players. I wouldn't say we intentionally said if you're younger, you are a priority, but we also were open to, hey, if you're Aiden Huntington and you show us that you deserve to be on the roster, you're going to be on the roster. So I think it speaks more to that than some specific like intentionality around age.
Glenn, is there any concern at 12 rookies is too many?
No. Like Kevin says, all our guys are developing, from top to bottom. And I know this is a weird analogy maybe, but Miles is working on something. He's trying to develop his craft. Like I said, Aiden, he's trying to develop his craft. So we'll never stop developing. You're going to always have guys that need to work on something, and the youth is something we'll work through. We're willing to allow the players to grow into their role on the team. And understand you may take some lumps, right? Like you may take some lumps here or there, but we try to balance thinking short term and long term, and that goes into all the decisions.
Would you like to have a veteran quarterback in the practice squad?
We'll see. We'll work through. This is the 53 today and the 16 in terms of our practice squad. Kevin and AB, I'm sure, will discuss where we sit holistically as a roster, and we're always going to be tweaking and working through what's the best fit for us.
What have you seen so far out of Isaiah Bond when you're watching him in the game and out here?
Yeah, he's come to work every day. Like you obviously, we have a lot of assessment and evaluations on him coming out, and we understand that he can run and make plays, and so he's really shown kind of who he is. And we'll let Kevin figure out how to use him and how much to use him and when to. But he's kind of done what we've asked so far in terms of integrating into the team and just the overall organization.
With the backup quarterback being a play away, and you've been here a few years, so you know how that Ferris wheel tends to
100%.
spin here. Why are you guys so confident that Dylan Gabriel's ready to step on the field?
Yeah, I think like Kevin said, I think it's you look at the work he's put in every day. You take the foundation of his college career and his experience and all the things that he did in college as well. Like, you know, it's a running eval, it's a running resume, and so I think he just put a lot of trust. He gained a lot of trust from the coaching staff just in terms of how he worked, and we feel good about it. So, look, every player is a player away, and I know Dylan's going to prepare and put himself in position that if he needs to be ready, he'll be ready.
How does the formation of the practice squad kind of factor into, kind of hand in hand with what you guys do with the 53?
Specifically, like
Just how you use it as sort of, you can kind of pull from it, with the way that the players you have on it.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good grasp of like how the rules have evolved and the different things you can do with it, and so it gives you some flexibility. And Andrew's big about maintaining optionality across the roster. So, if you can have a player on practice squad who in past you could not have had because of their accrued seasons, it does give you an opportunity to, develop some depth or pull up a player who can contribute in a way that doesn't harm the 53. So it gives you flexibility at the end of the day, and so we try to take advantage of it as much as we can.
Kevin mentioned you guys having like your evaluations on a lot of these guys, like especially the two guys you signed today, from the pre-draft process. But when so many players kind of enter this pool all at once from yesterday to today, how do you guys kind of go about like sorting through that? Is it almost like a big board where you have like certain guys that you remember from when you were looking at them? Like how do you just kind of?
Yeah, I know Adam, our director of player personnel, is probably looking to go home and kind of take a step back and breathe. Really, it's like from the start of camp, like it's a filtering process. It is pretty similar to the draft where you continue to work to that number and real pool of players who will be available, and you try to find that intersection of they're available, we like them, we can get them, and so it is very similar. And you work through, okay, how's this team depth chart, how they're looking, what's the health of their roster, how have they behaved in the past in terms of maybe going heavy at a certain position, going light at a certain position, and you just pull all those things together and we're all trying to predict, hey, this guy's going to get cut, he's going to make it, and make some some fair forecast on the pool, and then we dive into just evaluating them. So we take all our different parts of the evaluation, the film, all the other data that we have, and pull in as a team. To Kevin's point, in terms of medical history, combine, pro days, all of that is baked into it, which is why it's so important for us on the front end to get it. And we go after the guys we hope we can get.
What do you like? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go.
What do you like specifically about Aiden Huntington?
I mean, it's him, right? Like, I think he embodies what we talk about when we talk about toughness, competitiveness. Our scouts from back in January were excited about him. It's one of those things where he played in a defense where he played on the edge. We talk about wanting to get off the ball, launch and be aggressive, play in the backfield. And, our scouts were really pushing like, hey, we think he can do it. We never know, right? And then you go through the combine process, he tests on his pro day, blows it out of the water, and you just continue to get these data points that, man, this kid may have something in his body. But again, we don't know. He shows up, we don't get him pads until August, and every day he just put it on the field, right? Like you got to take the eye in the sky at some point and trust what you see in the guy. And it's been, you're happy for him, right? Because, there's a lot of disappointment in not getting drafted. But for him to still be able to earn a spot and do it in the fashion that he did, I think was awesome.
Glenn, just to go back to Isaiah from the front office perspective, because I know Kevin's talked about a little bit about going into the decision and what made you guys comfortable with bringing him in, but just from your perspective, can you explain the reasoning of that, given his case and the other players on this roster who have had similar?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, like for every case, Andrew has said it. We're going to do our work. We're going to take everything we know about the player, everything we know about each situation, and make the best decision for the org, right? And so I don't think it's any different in his case. We expect him to come in and, like I said, integrate himself into the team and organization and be the best version of himself, and so far he has done that.
What about Gage? He was obviously impressive this summer. What do you think is next for him in terms of...
I don't know, a lot of it comes down to how much opportunity. He's one of those dudes where he wants the challenge. Like he transfers from Miami, Ohio to go to South Carolina because he wants to compete and prove that he can play on the big stage. He gets there, has a few injuries, and maybe his college season doesn't go the way he wants it. But you saw that mindset out here every day. He didn't say many things, but in terms of in between the white lines, like the young man's competitive. And so I think he will earn, the reps that he deserves, and Kevin and the coaching staff will deploy him the best way we can and the best way they see fit. But again, he's just another example of when you get a chance, and Kevin said about staying ready. He was one of those guys who was just ready to take hold of all the opportunities he got.
Well, obviously, Kenny's the one who ended up getting dealt, but you have quarterbacks on this rise. Did you feel any phone calls about those rookies or even Michael?
Say the last part.
Did you get any phone calls on Kenny or on Dylan or Shador?
Nah, I wouldn't get into we specifically got phone calls on them. We took a number of calls just on trades, period. But specifically to the Qs, you'd be surprised.
One more. Glenn, it seemed like watching this D line throughout training camp, there's so much depth, so many guys that can create pressure. Just how happy are you guys with where that unit stands right now, especially when you have guys like Alex and Isaiah, where it's taken a couple of years, but
Yeah.
it seems like they're really coming out.
Yeah, I mean it's a position that takes sometimes takes a little time to develop, and so you want as much depth as you can have. We'll never apologize for having as many big guys on both sides of the ball as we can. So today we feel good about it. Like I said, August to October can look different. So we tried to load up and have as many guys that can contribute, be versatile, play different roles up front on both sides. And so we feel good and are excited about that group.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate y'all.